Let's take you back to Nasrec, where ANC delegates have started arriving for the second day of the policy conference. Ayanda Nyathi is there keeping a close eye on developments and speaking to delegates as they come and go into the conference. And Ayanda, you standing by to speak to Matthew Parks. The last time we spoke to him, he was very vocal and against salary increases for civil servants. It should be an interesting time at the policy conference today.
Yeah, without a doubt. Just before we get to that, really sobering, that discussion that Linda Mnisi had with one of those rape survivors. And it's the kind of development in this country, without a doubt, that's going to be part of some of the discussions that take place here today, especially around migration, when you consider who the perpetrators are and the ways through which they supposedly were able to gain entry into the country. In fact, a short while ago, the Home Affairs Minister, Aaron Motsoaledi, who's obviously here in his capacity as an ANC NEC member, calling in some instances for the army to be deployed in areas like West Village where this gang rape had taken place. But you're absolutely right, there are multiple issues being ventilated whilst we're here at the 6th National Policy Conference of the ANC here in Nasrec. And among those issues is around the voice that Labour has, and more specifically the Tripartite Alliance. And for that, let's bring in Cosatu's Matthew Parks, who, full disclosure, has been very patient with us, dare I say. Thanks very much indeed for speaking to Newzroom Afrika. Tutu Ramila, my colleague in our studios in Randburg, speaks about how vocal you've been around, the plight of workers, especially around salaries. We saw that playing out yesterday in one way or the other. And you had this juxtaposition of, on the one hand, the ANC inside here being at pains to explain that they take workers seriously, that they care about workers, and workers themselves telling a very different story outside. Where does that leave you as Cosatu, as the Tripartite Alliance?
Look, our mandate as Cosatu is to raise workers' issues, even if it offends our friends and our allies. So for us, the ANC did well over many years, passed progressive labour laws, working with Cosatu at Parliament. These have really helped to enhance workers' conditions, their labour rights and so forth. But it can't be acceptable for the ANC as an employer not to pay its own staff. That's illegal. It's a violation of the many labour laws, from the Basic Conditions of Employment Act to the Unemployment Insurance Act. It's a scandal. The ruling party can't be taken seriously by employers when you tell the employees to abide by the labour laws. So the ruling party itself is seen to be falling foul. And it's not just once, not just for this month or last month. It's been going on for years and years and years. And really it's unfair to these ANC staff members who are also NAHAO members, Cosatu members. They've lost homes, they've lost cars. Some of them have passed away. Sorry. And their families can't receive their pensions because the ANC hasn't paid. So we've been raising a sharp with the ANC leadership, wanted to be resolved. It cannot continue to go on. Even when the Communist Party also had a similar issue, we raised it quite sharply as well, because we want all employers, irrespective of who they are, whether they are trade unions, whether they are allies, whether they are government or the private sector, they must respect workers' rights, because that's the legal requirement of the law. There's no exceptions to it. But we've also raised issues of workers in the public service who didn't get an increase in 2020, despite a signed wage agreement. And we had all praised nurses and doctors and police officers during COVID, during the lockdown, for keeping people safe, yet we didn't want to give them an increase. And we think that is really unacceptable. Government needs to resolve that issue. We're also giving support to workers at SARS who have been on strike, at UNISA, and many other workplaces across the economy. Workers are struggling. They are highly indebted. They have lost wages. They are supporting relatives who have lost their jobs. They are bleeding. They are not coping.
Apologies for coming in there. I mean, you've spoken about the ANC potentially not being taken seriously because of its inability to solve some of these issues. How worried are you that Cosatu, by association, might also not be taken seriously?
Well, look, in democracy are very noisy. We get criticised all the time as Cosatu, even by our own members. So that must spur us to work even harder to address workers' concerns. I think for us, the criticism is not a problem. That should actually keep us on our toes. The point is we have to resolve the issues. So we cannot be happy as a society when we have an unemployment rate of 45%. When workers have lost jobs, workers are bleeding. We've had repo rates hikes every month for the past few months. It's suffocating workers in the economy, so we have to keep raising these issues. Workers have been struggling because of the fuel price increases, so we have to keep pushing on these issues and see how to resolve them. It does take time, but we have to keep pushing nonetheless, no matter who it is, no matter how much we might offend them. And yes, we do get criticised all the time because we're an alliance of the ANC, and that's why we're actually a bit more harsh on the ANC, because we expect them to do better. And workers like the ANC, and hence they say, you have to do better. We gave you our vote. We expect much more from you.
Right. Part of the matters to be discussed, at least in the first half of the day, is around organizational renewal and several other things. But insofar as that is concerned, I mean, the ANC itself has really kind of laid bare their own concerns about the future of this organization, given the challenges they face internally and their inability to get round to the doing. Where's Cosatu's voice in that space?
Look, society needs, not just Cosatu, society needs the ANC to be cleansed, to be renewed. It is our biggest ruling political party. It is a ruling party.
We've been saying this for a while, though. Let's be fair.
No, sure. And we're at the fork road. We've been saying that for a while, too.
Right.
We have a choice. We can continue to go down this route of factionism, of corruption, of hooliganism, of criminality in the ANC. ANC will die. It will lose the 2024 elections. Or we can support the efforts of the President and many other good people in the ANC to remove the corrupt elements, remove the factionism, the hooliganism. But the ANC has to be more firm and decisive. You cannot have ANC members of the ANC on Twitter insulting the President. You cannot have countless ministers, mayors, MECs, premiers implicating corruption. So we're quite pleased and happy when the ANC adopted the step-aside resolution. We think anybody who's sober will insist that it continues. It'll be a huge blunder for you if we reverse from it. But also, to be fair to the ANC, we need to see the law enforcement agency of the country to play their bit as well. So the ANC said certain mayors, ministers must step aside. We need to see the NPA taking these people to court, allow the trial to go through, prosecute them if they're guilty, convict them. But it can't be that ANC does something and then the law enforcement, the courts, take 5 years. That can't help, because that politicizes it, and justice delayed is justice denied. People want to see action because people are exhausted by corruption.
Right. Part of the recommendations that the ANC actually makes is around the depolitization of law enforcement, and that speaks to what you've just raised. But I imagine you'd also want to have your voice heard around the Economic Transformation Subcommittee and all those kind of discussions, given your interests and the people you represent. If there's one thing that Cosatu can walk out with in those discussions, what would that be?
Maybe three things. So fix the critical SOEs, Eskom, Trans and Metro, because those are key to growing the economy. Let's extend the employment programs, the presidential employment program, to help young people get into the economy. Let's look at extending relief to the unemployed. We have a huge problem with the SOT grant, where 5 million of its recipients haven't received the payments since April. It's a national disgrace and a scandal. So if we can sort those kind of issues, that I think can give a space for the economy to grow, help people find jobs, and also give relief to the unemployed.
All right, Matthew Parks, thanks very much indeed for speaking to us. Of course, the voice of Cosatu, certainly not to be scoffed at, given the kind of role they play in the tripartite alliance, but let's be frank, also given the number of workers that they still represent. Zingiswa Losi, who of course is the president of that particular federation, also really not stopping at much, I beg your pardon, to lay bare the levels of disillusionment, dare I say, that some of the workers are also feeling at that level. It's just one of the several aspects to be ventilated here. There are 8 commissions spanning from peace and stability to digitization and the balance of forces, issues around arts and culture, as well as around health and sciences. So there's much to be covered, and we're hoping that the ANC at the very least will be able to cover that ground between now and the wrap of the day.
Discontent, Ayanda, we can't forget playing itself out when the president during Cosatu's event was booed by some mine workers and he had to be whisked away in police nyalas. We'll continue to reflect on developments coming out of Nasrec.